Disclaimer: I am not a quote-unquote real translator. I'm just some guy. I have officially translated a few video games from Japanese into English, and I've also translated about a dozen full series of mainstream shoujo manga from Japanese into English, though I feel the need to point out at this moment that I have no formal training in the Japanese language or in the art of translation. In both of these subjects, I am self-taught. I'm just a guy who studied linguistics, journalism, and statistics in college and then later moved to Japan. I am by no means a Japanese language professor. My Japanese is not perfect. For example, while playing through Final Fantasy VII in Japanese for the first time as a 39-year-old, I repeatedly pronounced the Japanese word kodaishu as kodaitane. On the one hand, it is a made-up word, and my personal pronunciation of the final kanji is valid if less natural than the official rating. On the other hand, in my hunger to forge some etymological argument asserting that the English name the Ancients was blander than the original Japanese script, I wrote a long, pedantic paragraph of script explaining that the kanji shu, meaning species, when pronounced tane, means seed. These ancient people therefore seeded the planet. They settled it with their presence, and they seeded it with their knowledge, like farmers planting crops, except the crops were technology. This one Chinese character having two subtly differing meanings, I asserted, sufficed for an argument that the Ancients was too plain a name, and that this hokey plot right here clearly yearned for some highfalutin nomenclature along the lines of the ancestors or the precursors. I voice recorded this painstakingly long segment of my script. Then, while editing, I made the executive decision that this was too didactic a micro-lecture for even the most dedicated and patient of view buddies to sit through. View buddy is the private name I give my viewers, view buddies. Because this micro-lecture occurred immediately after I had just finished a 10-minute recap of every moment of my series up until that point, I deemed it a bit of a pay skill, and thus deserving of a cut. However, in several places both before and after the cut segment, my stupid cutesy affectatious reading kodaitane remained in the first volume of this finale episode when I first uploaded it to YouTube. Thus, my animal instinct to affect a quirky manner conspired with my ferocious tendency to edit, resulting in what appears to be, and therefore now has literally become, a quote-unquote translation misunderstanding deserving of placement in Final Fantasy VII's original 1997 script. What I'm telling you is, I am genuinely terrified that I am going to post this second half of this video on Kotaku.com, and immediately my phone will ring. I will pick it up. In a Doctor Who-esque Chrono-Triggerian shock twist, it'll be the original translator of the game. He's calling from 1997. The line noise crackles as space-time distorts.
"There's no time,"
he'll say.
"Get out of the building. The time cops are on their way."
And I'll say,
"What?"
And he'll say,
"You are me."
In other words, I'm sorry if this microphone makes me sound like a genius. I really am just some guy, and the way I learned Japanese was really stupid, and when you think about it, the way babies learn any language is equally stupid. Well,
Now that that's out of the way,
let's get back to criticizing someone who has no idea we're talking about him. Cloud awakens in a brick-floored, cylindrical, smokestacky house shack, quaking with regret in an uncomfortable-looking bed while his friend Barrett towers over him in judgmental disgust. Barrett tells Cloud that everyone is looking for Eris. Cloud tells Barrett of his vision that Eris is headed for the city of the Ancients, and that Sephiroth is probably already there. Barrett, at last finally definitively revealed as the most potent embodiment of traditional masculine values in this story, expresses resolve to leave immediately. Cloud refuses to go. Cloud believes he might wild out again, causing atrocious danger to all life on the planet. Barrett, the gladiolus to Cloud's Noctis, as it were, lashes out and lays into Cloud with some tough-loving loudness. Yeah, god darn it, it's because of you that Sephiroth got the black materia in the first place. It's your darn fault. the inquisitive viewer can archaeologize some bone chips and pot fragments of Japanese elegance within this English loquaciousness. Ah, そうだよ。お前のせいでセフィロスが黒マテリアを手に入れたんだ。責任を取れ。In Japanese, Barrett adopts a calmer tone. Note the lack of exclamation marks until the last line. I'll translate clearly. Yes, that's right. It's your fault that Sephiroth got the black materia. Take responsibility. In English, Barrett is obviously implying that Cloud needs to take responsibility. In Japanese, he's gruffly commanding his friend to do so. In Japanese, we get a glimpse of Barrett as a big brotherly best friend figure, disappointed at his little brotherly best friend's inability to equal his own mental fortitude. Eris, having effectively departed the story, leaves a void that Barrett fills for the sake of Cloud's character development. Until his very last dialogue in the game, Barrett will stay in this disappointed zone, tough-lovingly criticizing and reprimanding Cloud whenever necessary. And it's going to be necessary a lot. Now Barrett steps beyond the exact mold of his tough guy stereotype to transcend the big brother and best friend roles. In the dialogue that follows, Barrett now fully steps into the roles of mentor and wise man.
In Japanese, anyway.
In English, Barrett's pep talk to Cloud is full of clumsy stumbles and unnecessary slang. I know you got problems. Heck, we all do. You don't even understand yourself. In Japanese, he does not say, we all have problems. お前はよ、いろんな問題を抱えてるんだろうさ。自分のことよくわかんねえんだもんな。He's saying, clearly you have your share of problems, and you don't understand yourself. He is stating it as a cold fact. He is not offering Cloud sympathy. He's going to do that later, as emphasis. You gotta understand that there ain't no getting offa this train we're on. Till we get to the end of the line. This is actually exactly what he says in Japanese. でもよ、クラウド、俺たちが乗っちまったこの列車はよ、途中下車はなしだぜ。It may interest you to know that there's no getting off this train before we get to the end of the line. In Japanese is 途中下車はなしだぜ. 9 characters in Japanese becomes 70 characters in English. As I've been saying, this is why translating Japanese into English is so hard. I mean, get off the train before the end of the line is only 4 characters in Japanese. Tochu gesha. I mean, this makes sense given the mass transit culture of Japan. Though, like, seriously, now you know why Twitter doesn't let you have 280 characters if you're tweeting in Japanese. English Barrett continues to berate Cloud. God darn jackbutt, that's what you are. This slang is an affectation of the translator. In Japanese, Barrett says, しょうがねえやつだぜ. Roughly, here is a person about whom nothing can be done. This is a common utterance when a tough guy is trying to pep talk a weakling. Just think about it. How many people in this world do ya think really understand themselves? This is a direct translation of the Japanese. Here is where I must point out that Japanese Barrett is offering the sympathy he did not offer similarly to his English counterpart in the earlier dialogue. Now, finally, we arrive at the greatest text box in Japanese role-playing game English translation history. This text box lodged itself in my brain immediately one September Sunday night in 1997 and never left. At that time, I had no way of knowing that this text box would never exit my skull. If any professional chiselers are listening, if you happen to outlive me, feel free to etch this on my tombstone. I'm giving you actual permission to do this if you know how to work a chisel and you live longer than me. Seriously, like, do it in the middle of the day, and if anyone tells you to stop, just call up this video on YouTube. People get depressed in life because they don't know what's up. We could obsess over this text box for hours, days, weeks, months, years, or even decades.
Heck,
I already have. We could inquire as to whether or not Barrett is ice-coldly blaming depressed people for simply being ignorant about what is quote-unquote
up.
We could easily accuse Barrett of telling a clinically depressed person to, quote, just get over it, unquote. Even in 1997, with Korn and Limp Bizkit all the rage on Indianapolis's alternative radio station
X103 FM.
Even at this time when political correctness was never a concern in any of the jokes I laughed at in my college dorm room, Barrett's text box here struck me as rude, weird, and
sad.
What exactly, I wondered, was Barrett trying to say? The answer is an anticlimax. This text box is simply the result of a blazing fast translation, performed by a man on a doomsday of a brick wall deadline. At this point in my series, as I have asserted, I do not even have to show you the Japanese for you to be able to perfectly predict what it says. That Jay Barrett is far more sensitive, understanding, motivational, and inspirational than his English-speaking cousin. Dare datte wake wakannee kara, aada kouda nayamun daro. A rough translation. Everyone worries, gets depressed about this and that sometimes when they don't know what is up. Yeah? Of key importance is the phrase wake wakannee. This is a tough guy version of the phrase wake wakaranai. Wake means reason, case, circumstances, or meaning, though it's almost always subtly used. Wakaranai means to not understand. Wake wakaranai means to not understand the meaning, situation, reason. It's a loose way of saying I don't know what's up, or I don't know what's going on, or I don't know what I'm going to do, or I don't know what you're trying to do, or I don't know what you're trying to say, or I don't know what we're supposed to do, or you've got to be kidding me, or come on man, or
oh my god.
We could translate this phantom text box then as everybody goes through this. Nobody in the world doesn't ever have a time when they just don't know what's up with this or that, and it gets them down. Barrett is expressing empathy. Barrett is showing solidarity. Using the tough guy's favorite tool of the word everybody, Barrett is openly expressing that he, too, is depressed, and has been for a very long time. English Barrett dives into a barrel of generalities. However, they go on living. They don't run away. That's just how it is. Jay Barrett, however, does not say they don't run away. He says, nigedashitari shinai de yo. He directly beseeches Cloud, specifically, to not run away. This is very different from the English version, which reads as though Barrett is telling Cloud that a real but big boy man wouldn't run away. Jay Barrett is instead imploring Cloud to understand that being depressed is part of being strong. Barrett is Ned Stark, telling Bran Stark that it is only when a man is scared that he can be brave. In conclusion, Final Fantasy VII has now firmly decided that Barrett is a paragon of traditionally good masculine values.
I love him.
Now this, the most important dialogue in the whole game, continues as Cloud doubts himself. In English, Cloud says, "No, I'm afraid. If this keeps up, I may go crazy. I'm afraid." In Japanese, he says that if this keeps up, literally, that I might become not me. Our translator was, as I've said, racing the clock, and probably reflexively typed, I might go crazy, and moved on to the next line. If our translator had had a few months to look over the game and edit his script, he might have changed this line. Heck, he might have changed a lot of lines. The translator likely did not realize how important Cloud's struggle with his self, his identity, and his past history were going to be during the climactic moments of the story. And so, without thinking too much about it, he translated I might become not myself as I might go crazy. Here is where I say, for the last time ever in this series, that you might not think this is a big deal. I don't either. I'm just explaining it because I consider it extremely fun to think about this stuff. The quality of Final Fantasy VII's English translation will stay at about this level of missed nuance for the duration of the remainder of the game's running time. I consider this right here a perfect molecular example of the nuance shrinkage. What am I supposed to do? Pull out of here? Pull out to where? Actually, this is pretty bad. What the heck is this? I take back what I just said. The previous text box was a perfect molecular example of the average level of nuance shrinkage. This is maybe the low bar. Do you want me to talk about this? No. You know what? Sooner or later, I have to stop talking about this game for my own health. I just looked at the Japanese. I could explain this. I'm not going to. The translator clearly was not looking at the game, so I'm going to pass on this one.
Sorry.
Cloud pulls himself up by his bootstraps, which is probably pretty easy for a character designed by Tetsuya Nomura, am I right? Wow, that guy sure does draw big bootstraps. Outside, he meets Barrett. Barrett poses an immortal question, the likes of which has plagued, haunted, and even killed humans since the dawn of time. I just want to know, which is it gonna be? You want to find out about yourself, or are you afraid to find out? This is a perfectly acceptable translation of the Japanese. Even if you do go nuts again when you see Sephiroth, if it happens, it happens. I'll go upside your spiky white head and bring you back to normal. Let's look at the Japanese for this, though. See if you can guess what's different. I bet you can. もし、セフィロスと会ってよ。また、お前がおかしくなっちまったら、その時はその時だぜ。俺がぶん殴って正気に戻してやるからよ。Here's a rough translation. If you meet Sephiroth, yeah, and you get weird again? Well, if it happens, it happens. I'll just punch you real hard and return you to your senses. In conclusion, all racial tension that I encountered between Barret and Cloud in the English version of Final Fantasy VII is the invention of the translator. At no point does Final Fantasy VII's Japanese script communicate any notion whatsoever of Barret's awareness that he and Cloud have different skin colors. Fun fact, for the PC version of the game, released in 1998, Square removed the word white from this dialogue box. Nice try.
Cowboy.
Cloud and friends go after Eris. They have to play a little mini-game to obtain an item called a Lunar Harp in order to awaken and access the forest that leads to the City of the Ancients. A man explains to us that the quote-unquote sleeping forest will confuse people who go in while it is quote-unquote asleep. He then says, though just now, a girl in pink and a man in a black cape went in. You think they'll be all right? I've been lunar harping on this point for most of this series, so let's put it to sleep. Over the course of the story, townspeople and bystanders have referred to, quote, a man in a black cape, unquote. These people are alternately referring to Sephiroth's flunkies or Sephiroth himself. Sephiroth is not wearing a cape. Sephiroth's flunkies are wearing cloaks. The translator always uses the wording man in a black cape. The Japanese, however, always uses man in a black cape to describe the flunkies, and man in black to describe Sephiroth. The person here says that a girl in pink and a man in a black cape went into the forest. Clearly the girl in pink is Eris. Is the man in the black cape, then, one of Sephiroth's flunkies? Let's look at the Japanese. でもさっきピンクの女の子と黒い男の人が入っていったわ。大丈夫かしら? She says, ピンクの女の子, a pink girl, and 黒い男の人, a man in black, no cape. So, he's talking about Sephiroth. Finally, after 22 years, we've determined that it was Sephiroth himself who went into this forest after Eris in the scene immediately before Sephiroth kills Eris. That was a joke. I do not actually think this question is a topic of hot debate. Now we arrive at the final sequence I'll cover in this series. Cloud and his friends descend into the wicked, weird, crystal seashell, swirly Nautilus town which suffices as the Ancients' ancestral homeland. I always felt like most of this town was just art that nobody on the team knew what else to do with. We descend deeper and deeper, racing against time. The sense of foreboding is thick enough a buster sword would snap in half trying to cut through it. The music eerily looms. Cloud's struggle forms a palpable lump in the player's dry-eyed throat. Midnight on a September Sunday in 1997 comes and goes, the crispness of fall chilling the dorm room floors of our hearts. We arrive at an altar that looks like some gift object of unknown utility occupying space on a page in a sharper image catalog. We see Eris kneeling upon the altar, silent in prayer. Cloud boldly approaches, full of the resolve to rescue her from any invisible evil. To his shock and the horror of all his companions, Cloud draws his sword and bears down on Eris. The game lets us try to press buttons to escape. The confirm button only executes Cloud's will to kill. For a magical period of as many seconds as we decide to hesitate, Cloud's body twists and struggles, refusing our commands, Cloud's commands, and those commands of the puppet master. As far as game-designed critique of narrative-designed commentary on the nature of player agency goes, this sure blows BioShock straight up out of the water. Each press of the action button only brings Cloud closer to the murder of his love. His friends scream in terror. Cloud remembers his way a quantum before his blade finds flesh. First of all, look, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Yuffie, though if I don't talk about Yuffie at least once in this episode, I'm going to feel dumb. If Yuffie's in your party, then at the part where the party members shout at Cloud to stay his blade, she says, "Stop." In Japanese, she says, says stop, which is just stop in English with the O stretched out. This is what I mean when I say Yuffie is lazily, hastily translated, and that the translator might not have even known what she looked like. In Japanese, stop is slang for stop, and it's definitely the sort of slang that a Japanese teenaged girl would have used circa 1997. In English, stop is not slang. It's just a word. The translator could have literally put anything in this case. Now, Cloud shakes off the marionette strings for a moment, and then commits the worst typographical error in the entirety of this script. Ugh, what are you making me do? As a lifelong fan of video games and a lifelong connoisseur of the written word, I do declare that this is the absolute worst placed typographical error in video game history. It's a period instead of a question mark. This is the last dialogue box we see immediately before the most emotionally affecting pre-rendered CG cutscene in video game history as of 1997, and it's a question with a period instead of a question mark. Though I can explain it, I cannot forgive it. The Japanese language as it appears in popular culture such as video games or manga has been ahead of the curve for a long time. Now, in 2018, it is never unusual in English to end a text message or a tweet without a punctuation mark. In fact, if you use non-exclamation point punctuation in your texts, most of the time you're either asking for money or you're a narc. Japanese comics suspend the conventional rules of punctuation. Very often, words will exist in a speech balloon free of a punctuation mark. Usually, this has something to do with the tone of speech the writer is trying to convey. A period at the end of a sentence usually means the person spoke those words with confidence. A lack of any punctuation mark at all is as meaningful as a period, question mark, or exclamation mark. Whether punctuation is used or not used in Japanese comics, there's always a reason for it. Japanese role-playing games of the 1990s picked up on this punctuation trend. Here, in Japanese, Cloud says, roughly, ugh, what are you making me do? The lack of punctuation in Japanese subtly implies that Cloud is not yelling, or maybe not even speaking these words aloud to any practical listener. He isn't exactly thinking these words because Final Fantasy VII's style rules so far indicate thoughts happen within parentheses. For this text box, I'll consider the lack of parentheses or punctuation an indication of a low, spiritual mutter. In English, the translator could have put a question mark on it, or he could have translated the line not as a question. The Japanese line does contain the word nani, meaning what, though Japanese to English translators need not always consider the presence of a question word a requirement of rendering the line into a question. Furthermore, he could have left punctuation off altogether. Personally, given the jarring transition from this text box into a shocking cutscene, I would have ended the line with an M-. Sephiroth emerges. He kills Eris. Cloud's immediate response is denial. This can't be real. In Japanese, he says, "Uso daro?" Literally, this means, this must be a lie? Notice the question mark. This is a surprisingly weak, childish, vulnerable utterance style for someone who has put on such a tough guy appearance for so long. Sephiroth says, "Do not worry. Soon the girl will become part of the planet's energy." In Japanese, we finally witness Sephiroth speaking loudly and confidently, full of his godlike persona. "Ki ni suru koto wa nai," Mamonaku kono musume mo hoshi o meguru energy to naru. I'll try to punch this up. You needn't worry. Presently, this child will become part of the energy which surrounds the planet. In the next text box, the English translator misses a line from the Japanese original. In English, he says, "The promised land waits for me over the snowy fields." The top line in Japanese here is, "Watashi no yorimichi wa mo owatta." Roughly, "Thus concludes my little detour." Sephiroth is ice-coldly indicating that swinging by the city of the ancients to murder Eris occurred to him as a slight inconvenience and a mere errand. One could translate this as, well, now that that's out of the way, such a translation would have truly deepened our impression of Sephiroth's evil. Notice the one-line tall space at the bottom of the English text box. A translation of this line certainly would have fit, so I'm comfortable ruling this as a missed line. Sephiroth continues explaining his plan. "There, I will become a new being by uniting with the planet, as will this girl." In Japanese, his tone retains its godly boom. "Watashi wa soku de arata na sonzai to shite hoshi to ittai ka suru. Sono toki wa sono musume mo." These first two lines are the same. However, the third line meaningfully differs. In English, he says, "as will this girl." In Japanese, he says, "sono musume," that girl. Japanese demonstratives always describe objects in positional relation to the speaker or spoken to party. Kore and kono means something is close to the speaker's hand. Sore or sono stress positional relevance of an object to the spoken to party. Are and ano indicate an object not significantly close to either. By saying sono musume, Sephiroth is definitively describing that girl, as in the one close to Cloud. I consider this a meaningful nuance because the English translation makes it seem as though Sephiroth is speaking to no one in particular. Given Sephiroth's 1,000-yard stare and towering stature, we don't think twice about it. This guy definitely looks like he stands and speaks to no one in particular for at least 6 hours a day. I say this as someone who's just spent 3 hours speaking into a microphone. However, the demonstrative usage in Japanese concretely evidences that Sephiroth is speaking directly to Cloud, coldly. Technically, scientifically, he is explaining to Cloud the obviousness of his plan. He is oblivious to Cloud's human feelings. So Cloud lashes out. "Shut up. The cycle of nature and your stupid plan don't mean a thing. Eris is gone. Eris will no longer talk, no longer laugh, cry, or get angry. What about us? What are we supposed to do? What about my pain? My fingers are tingling. My mouth is dry. My eyes are burning. Damare. 自然のサイクルもお前の馬鹿げた計画も関係ない。エアリスがいなくなってしまう。エアリスはもう喋らない。もう笑わない。泣かない。怒らない。俺たちはどうしたらいい？この痛みはどうしたらいい？指先がチリチリする。口の中はカラカラだ。目の奥が熱いんだ。This entire speech is translated from the Japanese with 99% flawless accuracy. The 1% that's not perfectly accurate would be the very last line. He doesn't just say, "My eyes are burning." He says, "The inside or insides of my eyes or eye are or is hot." It sounds to me like he is describing a very physiologically specific type of headache.
I've had one of those.
A feeling like my eyeballs were hard filled with frying pan heat into shotgun pellets. I've had a headache like that at least once a week since I started making these videos.
Wow.
I have one right now. Sephiroth expresses weary surprise. What are you saying? Are you trying to tell me you have feelings too? 何を言っているのだ? お前に感情があるとでも言うのか? For the PC version, this line was actually corrected to, "What are you talking about? Are you trying to tell me you have feelings now?" This correction brings the line closer to the original Japanese. As it appears in the rough draft, or as fans call it, the PlayStation 1 version of Final Fantasy VII, this line gives us the somewhat comical impression that Sephiroth also has feelings. Of course. Who do you think I am? 当たり前だ。 俺がなんだと言うんだ? The original Japanese clearly uses the question word nan, meaning what. It does not use dare, meaning who. Here we see another quick piece of evidence that this translation was in fact done by a man who had not played Final Fantasy VII. The translator saw the purposely awkward Japanese phrase, "What do you think I am?" and translated it into the more idiomatic English expression, "Who do you think I am?" To be honest, I do grow somewhat weary of pointing out each and every sticky red-handed bit of evidence of the translator's haste. However, in this case, I noticed that again, for the second time in 2 dialogue boxes, an editor, or maybe the translator himself, somebody made a correction for the PC version, in which Cloud says, "Of course, what do you think I am?" Thus, the integrity of the superior Nihongo is restored. Ha, ha, ha. Stop acting as if you are sad. Note that Sephiroth's ha, ha, ha again is ku, ku, ku in Japanese. Kanashimu furi wa yamero? This is the last time I'll point this out. Otherwise, the translation is accurate, and there's no need for you to act as if you are angry either. This is a little bit fancier in Japanese. Ikari ni furueru engi mo hitsuyo nai. This means more like, you needn't performatively quiver in anger either. I guess my idea of a fancy person is that they say, "You needn't," instead of "you don't need to." Before throwing his mother at us for a boss battle while he executes a Batman escape, Sephiroth calls Cloud a puppet. In Japanese, he uses the word ningyo, which can mean puppet, and it usually does, though it also means doll, as in any type of doll. This is a personal bias, though I feel like in English, when we describe someone as a puppet, we're not concerned with the manufacturer of the puppet or the artificiality of the puppet, so much as we're interested in pointing out the existence of a marionette manipulator in the shadows above the stage. In English, when we call a politician a puppet, for example, it's not always with the implication that the person doesn't know they're a puppet. Most, if not all, political puppets know that they're puppets. Ningyo in Japanese feels deeper than simply puppet, because it strongly implies oblivious artificiality and disingenuity. To call someone a ningyo is to accuse them of comfort in their own falseness. Sephiroth knows more about Cloud and his memories than the story is going to reveal for some time yet. Having said all that, if I had been the translator of this game, I too would have gone with puppet. Now our heroes endure the crushing sorrow of Eris's funeral. When I first watched this scene in 1997, it impressed upon me the notion that Eris was never coming back to life. I knew that she was dead and gone forever. However, some people, most of them on the internet, seemed to be of the mind that because we don't watch her body decompose, she might come back to life later. Cloud lowers her lifeless body into a pool of what I always presumed was warm water, and she sinks down toward the swirling energy at the core of the earth. Here is where I remember the NASCAR-loving, perpetually shirtless, manly dude boy on my dorm floor. 1 hour after Final Fantasy VIII was released in the United States of America, my friend Keith and I were firing up its opening cutscene on my PlayStation. The perpetually shirtless, NASCAR-loving man-boy strutted into my room just as the choir began to sing Phthos Lusek Wikos Vinosek. That's Japanese for the succession of witches, by the way. Arms akimbo, the would-be cowboy gazed into the motion image of waves beating against a pristine beach.
Bro, is this that new Final Fantasy VII game?
This boy man had somehow played all the way through Final Fantasy VII without equipping a single materia. He did this simply because he saw a picture of Cloud holding a sword whilst standing in front of a motorcycle. He had also arrived all the way at the end of Final Fantasy VII thinking that the number 7 had been important enough to the plot that it was part of the title of the series. The waves continued to beat against the shore. Keith and I did not answer. We were too enthralled with our new favorite video game. We were just 3 dudes in Bloomington, Indiana, staring longingly at a computer-generated ocean within a 25-inch CRT television at 11 o'clock on the morning of Thursday, September 9th, 1999. The words, "I'll be here," materialized over the ocean. Then came the words, "I'll be waiting here." The NASCAR-loving boy man spoke up again, his drawl rising above the dramatic music.
Dude, don't even tell me that Eris chick is gonna come swimming up out of there.
If only Sephiroth had said that girl instead of this girl. If only the translator had not missed Sephiroth's ice-cold line about his detour being over. If only the translator had put a question mark on Cloud's dialogue box immediately before Sephiroth murders Eris. If Sephiroth and Cloud's shared laughter style had been slightly more distinctive, and if Eris had said consciousness instead of knowledge in that scene on the rope bridge, maybe he would have loved her like we did. We did not acknowledge his questions. After a few more seconds of silence, he said,
Bro, you know what would be tight? As if like they showed her bones like wash up on the shore.
Epilogue. In a hut in the city of the ancients, Cloud gathers up the determination to follow Sephiroth to the ends of the earth, even if it means the end of his life. He plainly recounts what he knows to be the facts of his life to his companions. He says, "There is a part of me that I don't understand, that part that made me give the black materia to Sephiroth. If you hadn't stopped me, Eris might have been..." Here the translator flinches from presenting the plainness of the Japanese. "Minna ga tomete kurenakereba, Eris wo kono te de." A rough translation. If you all hadn't stopped me, then, by my hands, Eris would have been. Here Cloud distinctly begins to verbally acknowledge that he stood psychological nanometers away from killing Eris with his own sword. Now Cloud begins to embrace vulnerability. He says, "There's something inside me, a person who is not really me." Cloud's struggle to understand the unknown person inside of himself will encompass the remainder of this story. The best and most texturally unique parts of Final Fantasy VII come after all of this is done. Over the course of many set pieces and flashbacks, Final Fantasy VII continually returns to re-examine a single moment in Cloud's life, until we have seen the solution of the mystery and the revelation of every secret. Cloud finally comes to know himself. Knowing himself requires him to know the person inside himself who is not himself. To love someone is to know someone who is not ourself. To love something is to make it a part of yourself. To love oneself, one must love someone else. To love someone else, you must love the person inside yourself who is not you. If Final Fantasy VII is Dostoevsky, it's kindergarten Dostoevsky. Though seeing as many video games are kindergarten J.K. Rowling in comparison, I'll take it. Upon reaching the end of his speech, Cloud says with a vulnerable sort of confidence, "Let's go." In Japanese, that's ikou, a gentle, suggestive invitation. So we go. We change the disc. We climb up a mountain. We snowboard down the mountain at a blazing fast 60 frames per second. We confront Sephiroth. It turns out Cloud isn't who he thinks he is. Some Godzilla monsters fly out of a hole in the North Pole. We go to jail. A meteor looms in the sky. Some girls have a slap fight on a big gun. We get an airship. Cloud is in a coma. We take a dip in the life stream. We pilot a submarine. We go back to Midgar and settle up with our rivals, the Turks. We kill Cloud's own private Dr. Frankenstein. 7 days remain before the meteor hits the Earth and extinctions everybody. We head to the North Crater to stop Sephiroth from becoming God. We traverse many abstract interactive postcards. They don't even logically fit together. Here, half a video game after Eris's death, and on the brink of jumping into a glowing hole toward an uncertain yet necessarily violent fate, Cloud coaches his brothers and sisters into action with the choice phrase, "Let's Mosey." To which Sid replies,
Darn!
"Again, stop saying it like a wimp. Can't you say move out or something?" Cloud, invigorated, complies. Boldly, he yells, "Move out!" After this famous line of dialogue, I have decided upon a title for my series. I call it Let's Mosey, a slow translation of Final Fantasy VII. For my final semantic archaeological contribution to this series, let's take a look at this famous line. Perhaps the most underrated element of the comedy value of the Let's Mosey line is Sid's sudden anger at it. He yells,
Again!
as though Cloud has been repeatedly using the word Mosey in sentences anytime he and Sid are alone together off camera. However, a quick search of the full text of Final Fantasy VII reveals that the word Mosey occurs exactly once, right here. In Japanese, let's Mosey is Yosh, ikoyo, minna, to which Cid replies, Ka! Matakayo! Matakayo does indeed mean again! Exclamation mark included. By again, Cid is referring to Cloud's use of the gentle, vulnerable, childlike ikoyo at the end of his speech after the death of Eris. Cid implores Cloud to use a stronger, more tough guy-like verb such as ikuze. Notice that Cid puts 2 exclamation marks on it. Cloud complies, shouting ikuze with 2 exclamation marks. Whether it's the real him or merely a performance for the sake of others, we will never know. The resolution behind Cloud's Let's Mosey is, thus, a callback to his sadness after Eris's death. At this ultimate moment of the game, we're meant to remember how far Cloud has come and how much he has hurt and bled in the past 5 years. Given the emotional megaton of the previous scene, I don't even feel a need to consult with my accountant to confirm that this Cloud right here definitely would not have said, "Let's Mosey," even if he had been wearing a cowboy hat. By reminding us of that moment of clarity in the wake of a tragedy back in the City of the Ancients, Final Fantasy VII is casting one last glance at its main theme, that there might be someone we do not know inside of us. Back in that hut, Cloud had said, "Ore no naka ni wa ore no shiranai bubun ga aru. Souyu jibun ga ore no naka ni iru. Ore de wa nai jibun ga." Inside me is a part of myself I do not know. Inside me is a person that is not me. He could be talking about the ghostly memories of genetic engineering that wield the power to control his every move. Or he could be speaking philosophically about his love. 4 years after I played Final Fantasy VII, I made a friend. I was living halfway around the world. I was living so far around the world that if I'd been living any farther away, I'd have objectively been on my way back to where I started. My friend and I started a band. We spent every moment together talking or making music, or talking about making music. We spent every moment apart writing letters to one another. Sometimes we mailed the letters to one another. Sometimes we just handed them to each other in person. Over the course of about 6 months, I went from speaking only the Japanese I was able to sound out while playing Final Fantasy IV and VI and Dragon Quest V to being fluent enough to order food on the phone. One day early in 2002, she handed me a sealed letter when we met to make some music. She told me I should read it at home, though if I wanted to read it now, that was okay. I opened the envelope while she was busy setting up her drums. I read the first paragraph. I looked at her. She continued tightening the snare. She paid me no mind. The first paragraph of the letter consisted of one sentence. Boku no naka ni wa boku de wa nai jibun ga iru. 1 year later, she killed herself. I had not played Final Fantasy VII in Japanese on the day I read that letter. She had never played any Final Fantasy games at all when she wrote that letter. Until several months ago, I had never seen Cloud's speech from this scene of the Japanese version of Final Fantasy VII. I freely admit today that I did not cry when Eris died in 1997. However, I did cry during this moment in 2018. Inside all of us is someone we do not know and someone we cannot know. What can we possibly really know about someone else? What can we know about a work of art or literature? Beyond understanding languages on their own terms, beyond interpreting words for their objective meaning, beyond deciding that love is itself a ghost. The only ultimate result of searching forever is finding a nothing larger than everything. This kind of nothing never goes away. And with that, I believe it's safe to say I have exhausted both myself and Final Fantasy VII. Good night, my friends. Good night, my ghosts. I will see you elsewhere and someday.